Hello and welcome to this session of DIF, which is part of a four-part video series examining the development of the circular economy ecosystem in India. I'm Pavitra and I'm your host for these sessions, and I'm thrilled to be back on DIF this year. The entire video series is going to be in the form of interviews with key stakeholders in the Indian ecosystem, and we'd like to thank the EU Resource Efficiency Initiative for their support in making this video series happen. In this DIF film, we'll have a look at the role that finance has to play in the transition to a circular economy, and also look at some of the interesting work that's starting to happen in India as well as across Asia. Moving on to the first question. Donald, can we get your thoughts very quickly on how the Indian financial sector is currently engaging with the circular economy?
I think the financial sector here in India is generally aware of the circular economy. There are actually a few pioneers who are leading the way, not just in terms of passively working with the major Indian corporates on their CE initiatives, but they're actually taking a bit of a lead and working with small businesses through incubators and accelerators. So.
Right. How do you think it's shaping up? For instance, what are some of the circular models or interventions that you're already starting to see developing that could be quite significant?
So I think the circular economy is in its infancy here in India, I have to think, to be honest. And one of the signs of that is that virtually every month I get a proposal for waste to energy. And it's something that, of course, here in India, it seems to be a very obvious solution to a very large and prevalent problem. But our view is that there are some real difficulties with treating waste, just to burn it and create ash and create byproducts which are not useful. So our starting position is really that it needs to be part of a waste management strategy, and that the waste is really a resource that needs to be captured. So our investments would be primarily focused on extracting those resources to begin with. That said, I think there's a great deal of reason to be optimistic here in India about the circular economy. There are a great number of small businesses that are highly innovative and driven largely by a group of people that are highly technically literate and are able to generate web applications that are available on websites and mobile phones that allow this transition from products to services. This transition from a product to service is very important in India, and particularly in addressing the needs of the bottom of the pyramid, so-called, and the rural poor and even the urban poor, because this transition to the service means that they don't have to have these large upfront investments in the products themselves, that they can actually access new services as and when they can afford them and need them. So that's a very important part of the development of India's economy.
As a stakeholder in the financial ecosystem, how do you see EIB driving the debate on the transition to the circular economy and also adapting to some of the new circular business models that are emerging?
Yeah, I think we need to select our projects in quite a different way. So the EIB has just published its guide to the circular economy, in which we talk about actually the types of project that we're now considering for eligibility. And of course these include research and development projects to look at new product designs to improve the recyclability, if I can use that word, of products. We're also including extending the life of existing projects, and I think that not only delivers economic benefits, that these products are able to generate financial returns for longer, but I think more importantly they're driving out the resource utilization, extending the resource efficiency of these products, which is a completely new area for the EIB. Much of the innovation in the circular economy is coming from small businesses, and these guys are having to adapt the way they're working in very deep ways. So, and probably the biggest transition for them is the switch from product to service, and the fact that they need to keep their products now on their own balance sheets for much longer, which means that they are no longer turning over their inventory in the way that they would have done previously. And so their balance sheets are growing. And when you have limited capital resources, rapidly growing balance sheets are very difficult to manage. So the EIB is adapting its lending to small businesses by supporting the growth of these small businesses and providing more direct finance into SMEs.
So that's some interesting work around supporting small businesses to move from the product to service models. Are there other finance instruments that you're using to generally encourage the move towards circularity for businesses?
So one of the areas that the EIB is just beginning to explore is the use of blended grant and debt finance to incentivize small businesses to take a more circular approach to their products and to developing them as services. In India and indeed across South Asia, we're going to be looking at a pilot that we're working with the International Solar Alliance on for off-grid solar. So these are small businesses that are selling off-grid solutions and for things like cooling milk or cooling agricultural produce or light manufacturing, all driven by off-grid solar panels and batteries. And we're incentivizing these small businesses to develop their products in a way that they can be recycled or upgraded and don't actually and are not disposable.
Moving on now to Shiva. Can you tell us about the Circular Cities Asia platform?
At Circular Cities Asia, we are trying to reimagine Asian cities as circular, regenerative spaces inspired by nature that generate zero waste, zero toxicity, and focus on livability. We have a very definitive framework to identify circular innovation and nurture it. We have a three-pillar framework, the first of which is the performance-driven city, where performance emerges as the basis of economic transactions in a city. The second pillar is the nutrient-aware city, which is a city which is completely aware of all the technical and biological nutrients metabolizing through its system. The third pillar is a nature-inspired city, where biomimicry emerges as the default design approach for products, solutions, services, and even systems. So our view of a circular economy in the urban context is very, very comprehensive, very holistic, and encompasses all the different sort of ideologies and schools of thought in the circular economy context existing globally right now. We are eventually developing into an innovation accelerator where we'll identify the best innovators in this space, nurture them, accelerate their success, their path to success. So we're looking to set up our first accelerator in South India very soon. I'll tell you why this framework is very, very important. We'll have to differentiate true circular economy innovation from innovation that looks like circular economy innovation but is not. A classic example is recycling. Recycling to some extent probably can be defined as closing material loops, which is an integral part of what a circular economy would look like. But focus on recycling is extremely problematic because a truly circular economy would perhaps focus on not even generating that waste in the first place. And that's why our framework is very important for us to be able to identify the right kind of innovation, discover the right innovators, the right entrepreneurs, and actually help their journey to commercial success.
Excellent. And what do you see as the role of finance in the circular transition for spurring new innovation as well as adapting to emerging business models?
Finance is going to play an absolutely critical role. We need finance at multiple levels. I spoke about how a key pillar of the circular economy is going to be a performance-driven economy, where performance emerges as the basis of economic transaction. This calls for completely new business models. And a key enabler of those business models is going to be finance. How can new financial instruments, debt, equity, or hybrid exotics like various structured instruments, help vendors, entrepreneurs, suppliers offer new business models to their clients? And it's very important that this is on a commercial basis and not subsidy finance. So how can new business models emerge, and how can finance help those business models and enable those business models? This is an absolutely key question. There are examples from other sectors. A big reason for the boom of solar PV, for example, in many countries is because a new financial model called output-based financing, where solar developers were paid based on the kilowatt hours they generated, was deployed to encourage the deployment of solar PV projects. This is very different from the traditional models of financing power infrastructure, where developers were paid for installing capacity or were provided a subsidy on the capex. Another great example is energy performance contracting, where energy efficiency projects have been developed with clients, and the developers have been paid on the basis of the savings realized. So these models exist in other disciplines. The key is to learn from them and deploy similar business models to realize the circular economy. And finance is going to play an absolutely key role, because finance has to evolve to enable these business models. The other big aspect of finance, of how finance could help the circular economy, is this. If you take risk capital traditionally, again, when we talk about risk capital, I'm referring to venture capital here, and venture capital itself is not that traditional. At most, it's probably 2 or 3 decades old. But even in this 3-decade history, if you see venture capital and how they make investment decisions, they are looking for that one unique differentiated offering that's so completely different from all other innovation out there, which would lend that investment a competitive advantage for many years to come. Innovation in the circular economy is going to be different. In the circular economy, it's not about how radically different you are from all other innovations out there. Instead, it is all about how collaborative your innovation is, how integrated your product or service is with other innovators. Because at the end of the useful life of your product, how can the technical nutrients in your product be seamlessly upcycled into other solutions? That is what is going to realize the vision of a circular economy. And for this, we completely need to reimagine how venture capital looks at investment opportunities, how they assess investment opportunities.
Fantastic. And we've heard some very interesting thoughts today on the sort of complete perspective shift that finance has to go through to be a part of this circular transition. It's interesting to see some of the new models that are being piloted, but clearly we need a lot more new models, a lot more pilots to happen, and to happen fast, in order for finance to play a serious role in pushing us towards a more circular economy. Thank you so much to our speakers for sharing your perspectives, and to our viewers for joining us here today. Do remember to catch other parts of this video series right here on DIF. Thank you.